Dear loving Father, I want to thank you for this morning. I want to thank you for my students and everyone who is undertaking this online course. I want to bless your holy name and magnify and exalt you, Most High Jehovah Shaddai. And as we begin this session, Father, I pray that, Lord, you'll make it easy for everyone, holding those ones who struggle to connect, Father. Those ones who struggle to get data, Father, may you provide for them. Lord, bless whatever they are doing. Lord, enrich them with knowledge and wisdom, Father. And as well guide me, Father, to deliver this lesson to the expectation of my students. We bless your holy name and we give you honor. In Jesus' mighty name we do pray and believe. Amen. Dear students, welcome to this class. We are looking at the climate of East Africa. We already mentioned in our introduction that East Africa is located within the tropics, within the equatorial region. So, since East Africa lies within the tropical latitudes, then the assumption would be that its climate is purely equatorial. However, a closer examination of East Africa's climate does bring us to a conclusion that its climate isn't equatorial, truly equatorial, for there are several climatic zones. Here I mean we have a lot of climatic variations within East African region. There are regions which still experience equatorial climate, but there are also regions which experience something similar to a desert other than equatorial climate. And yet, by definition, East Africa is located within the tropical regions. So among the various climatic zones in East Africa, one of them is the equatorial climate. And we say equatorial climate is the type of climate that is experienced within the regions between 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south of the equator. However, you must take note that this one is not an absolute demarcation, because when it comes to regionalization, and more so when you're talking about continuous phenomenon like climate, we cannot have clear defined boundaries. Therefore, this is kind of imaginary, because you'll find in certain areas the equatorial climate going beyond 5 degrees north, whereas in some areas it will be going beyond 5 degrees south, whereas in certain areas it may be even less than 5 degrees north. So this one is just an indicative figure that within that zone you are likely to experience the equatorial climate. In East Africa, the equatorial climate is experienced in areas around Lake Victoria Basin, and the typical equatorial climate here is and equatorial basin, Lake Victoria Basin, and the islands of Lake Victoria. This climate is characterized by heavy rainfall of about 2,000 millimeters per annum, which is even distributed throughout the year. The temperatures are also very high, ranging between very high, they're usually above 27 degrees Celsius. Humidity is very high, over 80%. The rainfall is of double maxima mode, where you have 2 rainfall peaks in the year. And then the type of rainfall usually received is convectional rain. Of course, from our knowledge of climatology, we know what convectional rainfall is. There is also a very dense cloud cover. Dense or thick cloud cover because of the humid conditions. And if you classify an area as having very high humidity of over 80%, then it is also just reasonable to say that there is a dense cloud cover, because clouds form from humidity. Where the humidity is absent, you will not find clouds. This climate is also characterized by low atmospheric pressure, and this is mainly because of the high temperatures experienced. You know very well that areas of high temperatures are associated with low atmospheric pressure. This is again our knowledge of climatology. Low pressure belts, low pressure belts, low temperature, high temperature, high temperature, high pressure belts, low temperature. So that's what usually happens. And since here we are within the equator region with rain, with sunshine received at 90-degree angle, and then temperatures over 27 degrees Celsius, so it's just normal for us to say that the atmospheric pressure here is very low as a result of that kind of phenomenon. So in addition, humidity, temperatures, I mean, in terms of rainfall, when we talk about rainfall, we already said that it's 2,000 millimeters above per annum. But then I must also mention within here is that this is now what we would refer to as the true equatorial climate. And this true equatorial climate, if I'm also to make a mention, is that it is just experienced in very limited areas, and that's why we have mentioned the Lake Victoria Basin and the islands of Lake Victoria. Ideally, this climate should be experienced in all the areas which lie within those latitudes, like I mentioned, 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south of the equator. And that kind of classification would make that the whole of Uganda, for example, because Uganda does not even reach 5 degrees north of the equator and 5 degrees south, because Uganda is 1 degree south and 4 degrees north. So the whole of Uganda will be experiencing true equatorial climate, but it's not the case. So the other climatic zone we have in East Africa is the moist tropical, or what we call modified equatorial. And just like the name suggests, modified equatorial, it means there is impact of man being felt in these areas. This type of climate may not differ much from the equatorial type of climate. However, rainfall received is less. So the definition here is based on the amount of the rainfall totals. Certain parameters remain the same, just like the first category, where we're talking about equatorial climate. But the difference is rainfall. If rainfall in the first zone is 2,000 millimeters per annum, here rainfall could be 1,000 to 2,000 millimeters per annum. But why do we call it modified? Like I've already mentioned, there is man doing something about this. The impact of man is felt. In other words, man's activities have helped to alter some of the natural settings that would exist in a true equatorial climate. It is characterized by high rainfall fairly distributed throughout the year. Rainfall totals ranging between 1,500 to 2,000 millimeters per annum. The temperatures are moderately high, 25 to 27 degrees. There are seasons of rainfall and aridity. In other words, sometimes there are seasons of heavy rainfall, but there are also seasons of dry weather. However, in certain regions, the rainfall seasons tend to merge to form one long rain season and one long dry season. So, in other words, sometimes this one merges into some sort of a savanna climate. Rainfall varies with the position of the area, i.e., northern hemisphere. Most tropical regions receive rain in the second half of the year. You know very well here, when we're talking about rainfall varying with the position, we are taking you back to our knowledge of climatology, where we talk about the apparent movement of the sun, and then the seasons, the distribution of seasons. That when the sun is in the northern hemisphere, there is more rain in the northern hemisphere than in the south. When the sun moves to the southern hemisphere, there is more rain in the southern hemisphere than in the north. That's what we are implying here. And then relative humidity is moderate, between 50 to 60%, and the temperature range is moderate, about 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. This climate is experienced in many areas of East Africa. Many areas. Those areas which would ideally be regarded as tropical climatic areas, but now because of man's activities have been altered, are these areas which are receiving this tropical moist or modified equatorial. Many areas of central Uganda, central Kenya, parts of northern Tanzania are in this zone. Then we have the dry tropical climate. This type of climate is experienced in several parts of East Africa, mainly adjacent to the same arid region, e.g. the western parts of Karamoja and the southern Nyika Plateau, parts of western Tanzania, and is characterized by the following characteristics. The rainfall received ranges between 760 to 1,000. In our in normal terms, this one would be the ones we would refer to as the savanna climate. Savanna climate, where you're receiving rainfall between 760 to 1,000 millimeters, or even sometimes 1,250 millimeters per annum. The rainfall is seasonal, though the dry seasons tend to be too long. These are areas where you find a dry season ranging from December up to April. So then rains come in April or May. So you find a very long dry season here. The temperatures are very high. They tend to be above 30 degrees Celsius. And also the temperature range is approximately high. There is limited cloud cover, and we know the limited cloud cover is as a result of low atmospheric humidity, because clouds form from humidity. Once the humidity is absent, then the cloud cover will also eventually be absent. The semi-arid and arid climate, or the semi-desert and desert climate, this type of climate is experienced in northern Kenya. For example, the Chalbi Desert, northeastern Uganda, that is parts of Karamoja. Although Karamoja may not be as worse as northern Kenya, because Karamoja tends to receive more rain than northern Kenya. But also parts of southern Kenya, we have the Nyeri Desert, we have northeastern parts of Tanzania, e.g. the Masai Steppe semi-desert. In central Tanzania, where we have the Miombo woodlands, then we have eastern parts of Ankole, what we call the Ankole-Masaka corridor, dry corridor. Some of you are welcome to visit. It's not necessarily not per se a desert, but it has a very long dry season. When you pass there during the dry season, you will know what we are talking about. In addition to the same desert climate, it's also experienced in the Western Rift Valley region around Lake George and Lake Edward. That region there within the Rift Valley also experiences it. But of course, that one of Lake George and Lake Edward, it's as a result of the rain shadow effect of the Rwenzori Mountains. The characteristics of this climatic region is that we have low rainfall of less than 750 millimeters per annum, whereas some areas even experience as low as 250 millimeters. Because if you only say 600 and 760, that would still remain high rainfall if it's well distributed. The humidity is very low, 20% and less. Very limited cloud cover. Since the humidity is very low, you can't expect to have dense cloud cover, and therefore the skies are generally clear, partly due to limited atmospheric moisture. Temperatures tend to be high, average temperatures ranging from 35 to 38 degrees. These are temperatures characteristic of semi-desert climate. The rainfall is unreliable, very unreliable. It comes in very short periods of time, whereas we have very extended drought. When you go to Karamoja during the rainy season, you will even ask a question: why do they call this a desert? Because during the rainy season in Karamoja, they receive a lot of rain. They can receive a lot of rain within a period of just 1 month, and then the rainfall disappears. So the problem with some of those areas is that the rainfall comes in a short period of time, and then the longer periods of the year are dry, and therefore that's why these areas we regard them as dry climate areas. There is the annual range of temperature of approximately 20 degrees. I hope you know those concepts of the annual temperature range and the like. The next climate type is mountain climate, or what we call alpine. This climate may also be referred to as alpine climate. It's experienced on the mountain peaks of East Africa. Those mountain peaks like Mount Rwenzori, Mount Kenya, Mount Elgon, Mount Meru, Kilimanjaro, Muhabura, Mount Mugahinga, Mount Sabino, etc. The distinguishing factor here is that there are low temperatures experienced. So the key characteristic of mountain climate is low temperatures. Snowfall may also be experienced in altitudes of more than 400 and 800 meters. And this type of rainfall, the type of rainfall received is relief rainfall, which is heavy on the windward side of the mountains and also scarce or lower on the leeward side of the mountain due to the rain shadow effect. Atmospheric pressure in the mountain climate conditions tend to be too low. Remember, we have already said that they tends to be too low, more so at lower altitude, but quite high at a higher altitude, because as you go upwards, as altitude rises, temperature drops, and you have to say that where there is low temperature, there is high atmospheric pressure. Then the next one is the tropical monsoon experienced in the coastal region of East Africa, basically influenced by the seasonal winds known as the monsoon winds. These seasonal winds affect the coastal areas of East Africa, i.e. we have the northeast and southeast monsoons, which tend to bring in heavy rainfall. The climatic zone is classified by high rainfall, ranging between 1000 millimeters to 1800 millimeters. And since the coastal regions are at low altitude, temperatures are also high. Those of you who have been to the coastal areas, you know what I'm talking about. That the coastal areas are characterized with very high temperatures. Some of you have, if you have ever been to Mombasa or Dar es Salaam or those areas of Zanzibar. Areas that experience the tropical monsoon include areas along the coastal belt, around Malindi, Mombasa, Tanga, Dar es Salaam, Kilwa, etc. So those are the major climatic zones experienced in East Africa. And therefore, from that kind of classification, you are now aware that the climate of East Africa is not truly equatorial, implying that there are several, because ideally, by virtue of our latitudinal location, our climate should have been equatorial. But because of certain issues which we are going to discuss as we go by, our climate is not truly equatorial, and therefore we experience all those climatic zones. So what are some of the factors that bring about this climatic variability? Climatic variability in East Africa is as a result of several factors, and these factors, which we are going to discuss in detail during our, I think we are going to discuss them in detail during our interactive session, because they are not part of these notes, but we shall have a kind of a discussion, an open group discussion. This time we are going to join with our microphones, so make sure we discuss these factors as a group, as a class. So let me not even mention them here. But of course, the other part on climate is looking at the effect of climate on human activities. We shall also discuss this during our interactive session, so that we understand how does this climate of East Africa impact on our human activities. And then from that discussion, we shall know whether the climate of East Africa is an asset or it's a liability. Is it a resource or it's not a resource? Then we will know these issues at the end of the day. So I want to thank you for being good students. Please continue to read hard, because open distance learning requires a little more personal study. I am surprised that some of you take time without even being part of it, without even logging onto the system. Please take time to read around all these issues. I gave you coursework. Do that coursework. More work is going to come, because here we are going to, most of the assessment is going to be based on coursework. So if you don't perform your coursework very well, then you will not be able to pass, because with this kind of scenario, I'm seeing where we are going to have more coursework probably, and you know our marks allocation, we have 50 coursework, 50 exam, so you must take it serious. But all in all, read. Those of you, I know you education students, you have not had the chance to take home exams. You know, take home exams are not the kind of exams we have been doing at campus. So unless otherwise, but our exams are going to be taken home, and you know the setting is quite different. If you've ever done open book, that's how it's done. So you must be well conversant. You must read widely. Even when you talk about issues with climate, you must probe yourself a lot about several issues about climate. What about this? What about this? So that we are able to be at par, we are able to attain the knowledge that we want.